Humans guard their territory. Aliens discover why it's untouchable. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Sarah Chen's revelation, and the galaxy had not been the same. Every major species was struggling to process the implications of humanity's true nature. The Galactic Council had convened emergency sessions that lasted for weeks. Scientists worked frantically to understand technologies they had never imagined possible. Military leaders debated whether humanity represented salvation or the ultimate threat. Captain Zexhar found himself at the center of these discussions, his encounter with Ambassador Chen making him one of the few beings in the galaxy who had direct communication with human representatives. Today, that responsibility weighed heavier than ever as he stood before the assembled delegates of 12 different species in the council chambers. Captain, Council Speaker Draven, an ancient Velnathi whose crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy, addressed him directly. "You've been in contact with human representatives for months now. In your opinion, should we accept their proposal for integration?" The proposal in question lay before them in detailed holographic displays. Humanity's plan for gradually joining galactic society while sharing their advanced knowledge and technology. It was an offer that promised to revolutionize everything, from medicine to space travel to the fundamental understanding of reality itself. It was also an offer that terrified every thinking being in the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Zexhar began, "I believe we need to understand what we're truly being offered before we can make that decision." He activated his personal display, showing data collected during months of carefully monitored contact with human representatives. Humanity's current technological capabilities are beyond our ability to fully measure. They've demonstrated mastery over fundamental forces we barely understand. But more importantly, they've demonstrated restraint. A Skorthak delegate, War Commander Gextal, slammed his armored fist on his console. Restraint! They destroyed an entire fleet. They relocated a fleet that was interfering with dangerous experiments, Zexhar corrected. The deaths were an unfortunate side effect of technology they're still perfecting. Since then, they've successfully transported 3 other fleets that violated their boundaries without any casualties. This was true. In the months following the revelation, several species had tested human resolve again. Each time, trespassing vessels had simply found themselves transported safely outside human space with no memory of how they got there. The transportation technology was improving, and no one had died. "What troubles me," interjected Dr. Kelness, a Zorathi scientist whose research had been revolutionized by carefully released human data, "is the scope of what they're offering. They claim they can cure any disease, extend lifespans indefinitely, provide unlimited clean energy, and enable faster-than-light travel that makes our current technology look primitive." "And that troubles you because?" Zexhar asked. "Because no species should have that much power. If they can do all that, what's to stop them from simply taking over the galaxy?" It was a fair question, one that had been debated endlessly in the months since first contact. Zexhar activated another section of his display, showing detailed analyses of human behavior patterns. "I've been asking myself the same question. The answer, I believe, lies in understanding why they left their original galaxy in the first place." He brought up images from their homeland, the twisted space-time anomalies that had once been thriving star systems. They didn't just make a mistake, they made the ultimate mistake. They achieved godlike power and used it without wisdom. The council chamber fell silent as delegates studied the horrifying images of reality itself, breaking down under the weight of uncontrolled technological advancement. "But here's what I find most significant," Zexhar continued. "They could have rebuilt their civilization here using the same dangerous technologies. Instead, they've spent 50 years developing ways to limit their own power. They've voluntarily constrained themselves to prevent another catastrophe." Speaker Draven's form pulsed brighter. Yet they're offering us those same technologies. Why? Because they've learned how to use them safely. More importantly, they believe we can learn to use them safely too. A new voice joined the discussion as the chamber doors opened to admit an unexpected guest. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked calmly to the center of the assembly, her presence causing a ripple of tension throughout the gathering. She had been invited to address the council, but her early arrival suggested urgency. "Forgive the interruption," she said, bowing respectfully to Speaker Draven. "But recent events have made it necessary for me to share information that will affect your decision." "What events?" War Commander Gextal demanded. Sarah Chen activated her own holographic display, showing star charts that extended far beyond the known galaxy. "Our long-range sensors have detected something approaching from intergalactic space. The same type of reality distortion signatures that destroyed our home galaxy." The chamber erupted in confused voices as delegates struggled to understand the implications. Zexhar felt his heart skip a beat as the terrible possibility dawned on him. "You're saying that whatever destroyed Andromeda is coming here?" "Not exactly," Sarah Chen replied. "We're saying that our experiments in Andromeda opened doorways that should never have been opened. We thought we had closed them all before the final evacuation, but it appears we were wrong. One of those doorways has stabilized, and things are coming through." The holographic display shifted to show sensor readings that defied comprehension. Energy signatures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving through folded space, and most disturbing of all, what appeared to be artificial structures larger than most solar systems. "Things," Dr. Kellness whispered. "Entities that exist beyond normal dimensional boundaries, artificial intelligences that achieved transcendence and no longer recognize the laws of physics as limitations. Weapons systems that operate on principles of reality manipulation we never fully understood." Sarah Chen's voice remained calm, but her eyes showed the weight of terrible knowledge. "The collective term we used for them was the infinite. They were our creations, our tools, our children. And when reality began breaking down around them, they adapted instead of dying." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Finally, Speaker Draven found his voice. "How long do we have?" "Based on current approach vectors, they'll reach this galaxy in approximately 50 standard years. That's enough time to prepare, but only if we start immediately." War Commander Gextal leaned forward aggressively. "Prepare how? Do you expect us to fight beings that can manipulate reality itself?" "No," Sarah Chen replied. "I expect us to transcend the need to fight them by becoming something they can't destroy." She activated a new section of her display, showing technological diagrams that seemed to merge organic and artificial elements in ways that suggested completely new forms of existence. "This is why humanity has offered integration. Not because we want to rule you, but because we need your help. Every species thinks differently, approaches problems from different angles, has different strengths. The Velnathi's crystalline matrix consciousness allows for computational abilities we can't match. The Scorthax warrior culture has developed strategic thinking we never achieved. The Zorathi's scientific methodology is actually superior to our own in several key areas." Zexhar was beginning to understand. "You're not offering us your technology. You're offering us a partnership." "Exactly. Humanity learned to manipulate reality, but we learned it alone, from a single perspective. The infinite represent what happens when transcendence occurs in isolation. They became so far removed from baseline reality that they view all other forms of life as temporary inconveniences to be optimized away." "And you believe cooperation will lead to a different outcome?" "I believe cooperation is the only thing that can lead to a different outcome. When multiple species achieve transcendence together, they maintain connections to their original natures. They remember what it was like to be limited, vulnerable, mortal, They retain compassion and wisdom instead of just power. Dr. Kellnis studied the approaching threat analysis more closely. Ambassador, these readings suggest entities of enormous capability. Even if we achieve this cooperative transcendence, how do we know we'll be strong enough to face them? Sarah Chen smiled, and for the first time since her arrival, the expression seemed genuinely hopeful rather than terrifying. Because we won't be facing them alone, and because transcendence isn't about becoming more powerful, it's about becoming wise enough not to need power. She gestured to the holographic displays, and the images shifted to show something remarkable. Existing human settlements beginning to merge with environments in ways that suggested technology and nature had become indistinguishable. This is what we've been building for 50 years. Not weapons or shields, but a new way of existing that makes conflict irrelevant. When the infinite arrive, they'll find a galaxy populated by beings who have learned from humanity's mistakes, who have achieved advancement without losing their souls. Speaker Draven's form pulsed thoughtfully. You're describing evolution beyond our current understanding. I'm describing survival, Sarah Chen corrected. The universe is vast and full of species that will eventually face the choice between transcendence and extinction. We've had 50 years to think about our mistakes and plan for yours. This galaxy represents the first chance to prove that advancement doesn't require abandonment of wisdom. War Commander Gextal, surprisingly, was the first to speak in support. My people have always believed that strength comes from facing the greatest challenges. If what you say is true, then cooperation with humanity represents the ultimate test of that philosophy. Dr. Kellnis nodded slowly. The scientific implications alone justify the risks. If we can learn to develop technology without losing control of it. One by one, delegates began expressing cautious support for integration. The debate continued for hours, with detailed discussions of implementation phases, safeguards, and contingency plans. But the fundamental decision had been made. Finally, Speaker Draven called for a formal vote. All those in favor of accepting humanity's integration proposal? The result was unanimous, though several delegates expressed lingering reservations about the speed of implementation. As the session concluded and delegates began filing out, Zexhar approached Ambassador Chen. There's something I need to ask you privately. She nodded and followed him to a quiet corner of the chamber. What's troubling you, Captain? This threat you've detected, how do you know it's really coming? How do you know this isn't just a way to convince us to accept integration? Sarah Chen studied him for a long moment before answering. Because, Captain, I was there when we opened the first doorway to their dimension. I was part of the research team that created the infinite in the first place. I've spent 50 years trying to figure out how to stop them, and I've finally realized that stopping them isn't the answer. Then what is? Becoming something they can't understand. Something that exists beyond their ability to optimize or control. The only way to defeat a force that can manipulate reality is to become a force that can redefine what reality means. Zexhar considered this, his explorer's instincts finally satisfied with the scope of the challenge ahead. When do we begin? We already have. The moment your council voted yes, integration protocols activated across human space. Our worlds are already beginning to merge their technologies with yours. Within a year, the first joint colonies will be established. Within a decade, the boundaries between species will become meaningless. And in 50 years? Sarah Chen's smile returned, and this time it carried no trace of fear. In 50 years, when the infinite arrive, they'll discover that this galaxy has become something unprecedented, a truly cooperative civilization that has achieved transcendence without losing its humanity. They'll find beings who have learned to wield godlike power with mortal wisdom. Will that be enough? It will have to be, because the alternative is becoming like them, powerful, eternal, and utterly alone in a universe they've optimized into sterile perfection. As Zexhar watched the human ambassador leave the chamber, he reflected on how completely his understanding of the universe had changed. 6 months ago, humans had been an unknown mystery. Now they represented both the greatest threat and the greatest hope the galaxy had ever encountered. But perhaps that was the true nature of transcendence, the recognition that ultimate power could only be safely wielded by those who understood ultimate responsibility. The galaxy would never be the same. But for the first time since learning about humanity's true nature, Zexhar was confident it would survive to see whatever came next. Outside the council chambers, the work of integration had already begun.